It's an ambush.
Oh my God, it's an ambush!
It's an ambush!
Of course!
Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on where you are. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Tuesday. That's what it is, Tuesday. I kind of forgot what time it was. So I don't usually do ambush streams 2 days in a row, but then I don't usually see stories popping up that really get me excited. And I just can't wait until the weekend on Sunday to do a digest about them, so here we are. I got a story that just popped up in the last hour or so, a couple hours, and it was too interesting and related to other things we've talked about in the past that I thought, okay, well, that's what instant gratification is for, gratifying instantly. So here we are, rock us like a hurricane. And so, as always, apologies for the short notice, but then it wouldn't be an ambush stream if I gave you a lot of warning. And thanks to those of you that have been able to pop in. Jaeger Pony, good morning. The Luke Skywalker 2, good morning. Samnamnyon Nation, good morning. Raziel, Dos Vidania, something like that. I don't know. Mike Savage, Blarg, and anybody else that might be lurking or in the future or joining in late, if you can call it late. Also, the best Rennie, good morning. So I saw this headline, and given recent events with the Fearless Fund and several other organizations that have had their demonstrably racist and or sexist contract or grant programs being challenged in court, so far as I can tell, this is the biggest governmental one that has occurred recently. Now, it's not a total and absolute outlawing of such programs, but it is not a win for the Department of Transportation or for governmental programs that discriminate on the basis of race or gender. So let's take a look at this. This is from the Washington Post just today at, 12:33 p.m. Eastern Time is when it was posted. Judge partially blocks Transportation Department program for minorities and women. U.S. District Judge Gregory F. Van Tattenhove, that is a name, wrote that the plaintiffs probably will win their lawsuit against the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. So businesses are inherently disadvantaged because of the skin color and or gender of the people running them. That's sweet. A federal judge in Kentucky has partially blocked a U.S. Transportation Department program that metes out contracts to minority-owned businesses and suggested he may eventually rule against it, marking the latest blow to a government affirmative action program. In a 28-page opinion issued Monday, U.S. District Judge Gregory F. Van Tattenhove wrote that, for now, the scope of the injunction is limited to the two plaintiffs, both transportation contractors, and at least two states, Kentucky and Indiana, where the contractors operate. But in reaching that decision, Van Tattenhove wrote that government failed to justify the program and that the plaintiffs would, quote, likely win on the merits of their constitutional claims, unquote, which would have implications nationwide. Quote, the court is keenly aware of the past discrimination that certain groups of people have faced in this country, and the court is sure that the federal government has nothing but good intentions in trying to remedy past wrongs, wrote Van Tattenhove, a George W. Bush appointee. Quote, but remedying those wrongs must still pass constitutional muster. The federal government cannot classify people in such a manner that violates the principles of equal protection, unquote. Thank you, Judge Van Tattenhove, or Tatenhove, depending on how you say it. Yes, you can attempt to address these things, but you can't do it that violates the Constitution. And just because you want to help historically underserved populations doesn't mean you get to violate constitutional law in the process. I've talked about extensively in the past, there was a period of time where that could make some sense. You know, right after the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, you could say, and legitimately so, you know, we've passed this law, from here on out these things are illegal, but we cannot deny the damage that has been done in the past by these things not being illegal. So having a period of time after such a law passes where certain programs or certain considerations are given to certain demographics to try to make up for lost time, Yes, it still violates the law as written, but it is an understandable sort of probationary period. But 1964 was a long time ago now, and even the Supreme Court has essentially said that period of grace is over for such considerations with their affirmative action decision in colleges. And it's starting to affect other things too, thankfully. Let's continue. The Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, or DBE, is at least the fourth such program in recent months to be enjoined on constitutional grounds. In March, a federal judge in Texas ordered the 55-year-old Minority Business Development Agency to open its doors to all, including white entrepreneurs. Last summer, a Tennessee judge ruled that a Small Business Administration 8 program, or 8A program, for minority contractors could no longer presume certain ethnic groups were inherently, quote-unquote, disadvantaged, a key requirement to receive set-asides for government contracts. Those challenges represent only a fraction of the lawsuits filed since 2021 that seek to end racial preferences in the private and government contracting sectors. The legal assault against diversity initiatives accelerated after the Supreme Court overturned race-conscious college admissions last June. The DBE initiative aims to direct at least 10% of federal transportation infrastructure funding to contracting firms owned by women and minorities. The program has been activated numerous times since it was established in the early 1980s, most recently under the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in 2021. So again, 10% of $1.2 trillion set aside for businesses purely on the basis of the color or gender of the people who own them. Okay. Though the program is funded by the federal government, it is administered by state governments. Contractors Mid-America Milling and Bagshaw Trucking sued the agency in October, alleging that the program's race and gender-based preferences violate the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. And I would agree. I'd also say that it also probably violates Title VI, but that's all another question. The lawsuit asked the court to bar the program's use of racial and gender preferences entirely and open the program to contractors from all backgrounds. As one would hope. Mid-America Milling and Bagshaw, both based in Indiana, are being represented by the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, a legal nonprofit group. Quote, "We are ecstatic that our clients can now bid on road building projects without any fear of discrimination, and we look forward to expanding this decision to protect all companies that bid on federal infrastructure projects," unquote, Daniel Lennington, a lawyer with the Wisconsin nonprofit, said in an email Tuesday. Transportation Department spokesman Sean Manning said the agency would continue to defend the program as the case plays out, but would comply with the preliminary ruling. Well, you can defend it all you want. You're defending old thinking that needs to go by the wayside. Thinking that had already, I thought, was starting to go by the wayside as of 1964, but never mind that. The Justice Department says in court filings that the program is designed to remedy past and ongoing discrimination. Okay, past and ongoing discrimination in the federally assisted transportation contracting market. Yes, it's designed to remedy ongoing discrimination via ongoing discrimination. Do we see the problem here? I think those of us that have half a brain do. When Congress most recently authorized the program in 2021, it cited research that found race and gender-based discrimination persists across a range of industries and that the program is needed combat statistical disparities. I think needed to combat statistical disparities, but anyway, the government wrote in court filings. Well, here's the thing. Does a disparity inherently indicate an inequity? The answer is no. And found that race and gender-based discrimination persists? Well, of course, because you're discriminating on the base of race and gender in contracts still. If you happen to be not, or you happen to be white, or happen to be not female, you're discriminated against, aren't you? The Transportation Department said state transportation departments, airports, and transit agencies reported certifying about 49,000 disadvantaged business enterprises. Disadvantaged businesses have earned almost $34 billion through federal transportation contracts in the past 5 budget years, according to data provided by the Transportation Department. Well, let me ask you something. if the first prerequisite as to whether or not they would be given these federal contracts was the race and or gender of the owners, is that an earning situation in any sense? Okay. That figure is about 12.5% of overall spending. I thought it was supposed to be 10%. No. The annual sum has grown since the passage of the 2021 infrastructure law, consistent with a growth in overall federal transportation spending fueled by the $1 trillion package. In 2023, disadvantaged contractors also did slightly better than in past years, securing 13% of the federal dollars, according to the data. Oh, so the potential racial and gender discrimination had spread plus 3% from the assured 10% of spending. Oh, okay. I mean, we can't not suspect that that additional 3% wasn't based on outward discrimination, can we? Because it's allowed 10% of the rest of the time. The preliminary injunction means that the Transportation Department cannot use race and gender-based criteria on contracts on which the plaintiffs bid, according to Van Tattenhove's order. The full scope of the injunction remains unclear, Lennington said, because Mid-America Milling has bid on contracts, in 21 states, in addition to Kentucky and Indiana. Uh-oh. He said he would have to clarify it with the court or come to an agreement with the government, but Lennington expects that the program will be halted in the rest of the country eventually. I hope so. Quote, given this ruling, we expect the permanent nationwide relief for all companies in 2025, he said. That's a short time frame. I hope it happens. Mid-America Milling removes road services for repaving, according to a declaration signed by Assistant General Manager Kramer Cotter, one of two female co-owners. The company has been in business for more than 4 decades, employs 32 people, and gets most of its business from federal highway contracts. The company does not qualify for the program because a majority of its 6 owners are not minorities or women. So you mean they're white and men. It's an interesting way to put it, but okay. Mid-America Milling alleges it lost at least 82 jobs to DBE businesses since January 2022, even though its bids were lower. Quote, when a contract is awarded to a company with a higher bid based upon its DBE status, MAMCO and its employees are not the only ones affected, Cotter wrote. Quote, because these projects are funded with federal transportation dollars, American taxpayers are paying more than is necessary for the work, unquote. Yeah, and there's almost like an incentive that if you are a company that falls within this DBE thing, you can put up a bid for just about anything, and you have an advantage over anyone else that might bid lower who is not owned by the right kind of people. Because that's the first prerequisite, right? Not merit, not your bid, but your color or gender. The second plaintiff is Bagshaw Trucking, a 40-year-old heavy trucking and hauling contractor that serves the construction industry. Bagshaw is not minority-owned and loses $3 million annually to DBE businesses, according to a declaration signed by Vice President Gregory Bagshaw. Yeah, imagine if the roles were reversed here. Imagine if the government favored white owners of businesses and minority owners of businesses were losing out on millions, if not, overall billions of dollars a year on contracts. That would be a scandal, wouldn't it? And rightfully so. Quote, I do not believe it is right for the federal government to discriminate against any person based on their race, no matter what that race is, unquote, Bagshaw wrote in his declaration. Quote, it is demeaning and dehumanizing to decide who is best qualified to perform work in the construction industry or any industry based upon the owner's skin color, unquote. A statement that could easily have been said prior to 1964 and been just as morally correct. But here we are. John Pecoraro and Philip Washington, chairs of the Equity in Infrastructure Project, said that while the DBE program helps women and minority-owned businesses compete for contracts, the public also benefits when there is more competition in the bidding process. You're correct. There is more benefit when there's more competition to the bidding process, except that the DBE program specifically excises people from competing based on what they are. So That is an interesting statement to make. Quote, "It's a matter of opportunity in the infrastructure space," said Washington, the chief executive of Denver International Airport. Quote, "In many cases, it's actually bringing up communities. It's actually increasingly generational wealth in communities." Do you mean increasing? I don't know if that's a typo on the Washington Post part or that is how the speaker said it. Yeah, and let's say that that's true, instead of just increasing generational wealth in particular individuals and businesses. On what basis are they gaining those opportunities? And does that sound right to you if the roles were reversed? I bet not. The Equity and Infrastructure Project, which is decidedly a contradiction in terms, works with transportation agencies to help minority and women-owned firms make the transition from subcontractor to joint partners or lead bidders, because minorities and women need helping hands because they're inherently disadvantaged. That's the weird thing. If you are a business that accepted money from the DBE program, you're saying that your race and or gender is a disability. I mean, in official terms, your race or gender is a disability. Pecoraro, a former deputy secretary for transportation, emphasized that, at best, the program is, quote, "actually increasing competition." How? And is providing opportunities for disadvantaged businesses to compete that they otherwise wouldn't have had, unquote. How do you know that? How do you know that? If you rig the game so that someone is going to have a chance to win, regardless of competition from someone else that you've excised that could do better or worse, how do you prove that? I don't know what to tell you. This is anti-capitalist, anti-free market, anti-competition inherently, and it's racist and sexist at its core. Those are the two words you didn't see anywhere in this article. These federal programs are racist and sexist. It's not, and that's not some kind of buzzword stuff. This isn't somebody complaining about, oh, you didn't like the acolyte, you're racist and sexist. No, this is explicitly racist and sexist programs. And this guy's like, oh, it's actually increasing competition and providing opportunities. Yeah, it's a rigged game. And you know what? If a business owned by minorities or women is going to rise to the top, they have to face off against all competitors. This is... Anyway, I could go on, but I think you get the point. Anyway, who else is here? Spellcast Art. Good morning / afternoon, as it were. Darren Root. Good morning, afternoon. Who else is here? Okay. I know we've spoken in the past. And I know I have practiced this before, but it's been a while since I've seen you. So, Mishiru Kururugi. Did I get that right? I know we've had this conversation before. I know we have. It's just been I'm out of practice. So please let me know. Assassin of the Gray. Good morning, afternoon. Who else is here? Peter. Good morning, afternoon. TC Boggs. Affirmative action was always illegal. By the spirit and letter of the law, yes. Again, in all reasonableness, I could see a probationary period of maybe a decade or two after the Civil Rights Act passed, just because you can't fix the damage done previous. Like I say, I could kind of see it, but that time has long since passed, and we're at a point now where we can't keep doing this. At this point, it's just persistently illegal, unconstitutional, and unfair. Especially in education, and in this case as well, business opportunities. Yeah. Josh Hammond, good morning or afternoon. Hey, Scribbles the Dogcat Fox. Wowie wow wow. Well, I mean, Scribbles the Dogcat Fox. I am not the Dogcat Fox. Dogcat Fox is his own person, aren't you? Wowie wow wow. See? I can't say those things at the same time. This isn't some ventriloquist act. He's over there eating his food or whatever. Okay. Anyway. All right, here we go. Very close. Last name was right. But mine is pronounced Micheru. Micheru Kururugi. Micheru. Okay. All right. Well, I will continue to try to remember to do that. Of course, you are a rare appearance in the chat, and probably just because of timing and everything else, and that I don't do these very often on random days. But it's nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. All right. Well, there was an associated story I saw yesterday that I was going to hold off until Sunday, maybe, for the Sunday stream. But with this revelation about the Department of Transportation, I thought, oh well, they're so closely related. I thought I'd go over this one too. Let's talk about this. This comes from a site called Notus, or Not Us, or Notus. I don't know. Black operatives are furious over how Kamala Harris's campaign is spending money. In what way? Minority-owned firms are frustrated the campaign is relying on white-owned firms for spending, and they're worried that could ultimately hurt the campaign with voters of color. Okay, so Kamala Harris is not being racially discriminatory in the ways they want her to be. So she needs to be racially discriminatory in the other ways. That would be good. All right. Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, was frustrated after a call with Kamala Harris's campaign early last month. And by the way, this was published on September 23rd, so just yesterday. He and others on the call felt they hadn't gotten a clear answer to something that had mystified leaders in Congress, co-chairs of the campaign, and donors. Why did it seem like minority-owned political firms that typically work with Democratic campaigns aren't getting as much of the record-breaking Harris campaign money as white-owned firms? Maybe you guys suck. I mean, I don't want to bring up merit here, the possibility. Or Kamala's a hypocrite, or she owes favors to other people. Who knows? There's a whole bunch of possibilities here. But let's see. Quote, if black voters are the base, it should be black vendors telling the story, said one person familiar with the conversation with the nonpartisan group's leader. Do you mean to tell me that agents or representatives of the Democratic Party, despite their rhetoric otherwise, aren't actually focused on the well-being or benefit of minority communities? I mean, I'm shocked. I'm completely, absolutely, totally, can you believe it, shocked that that would be the case. But that's just one theory. And by the time the call finished, quote, we still didn't really have any clear answers on anything, unquote. You expect clear answers from the Kamala Harris campaign, or Kamala Harris herself? Admittedly, she has not been on the campaign trail very long this time around, but hate to tell you this. The conversation with Quentin Folks, Harris's principal deputy campaign manager, though cordial, was so far from any resolution that Johnson vowed to take the issue higher, three people told Not Us, Notus, Notus, to someone who could answer how money is being spent and whether it's being spent equitably. Right, equitably as in, are you giving people money on the basis of their skin color? The correct skin colors. This is an amazing thing when you stop and think about actually what's being said here for a moment, isn't it? Democrats are worried about the backslide that they appear to be having with some black voters, and black vendors and their allies see an obvious solution. Wait for it. Wait for it. Spend more money with the political class who actually know the most about that constituency and can adeptly tell Harris's story. And there's sirens in the background. I don't know if you can hear those. I don't know if they're going to come closer or go further away. Go further away. Stop bothering me. Yeah, this is what you get for living near a fire department and a highway patrol office. I mean, good news, bad news, but anyway. Well, spend more money with the political class who actually know the most about that constituency and can adeptly tell Harris's story. I thought you want. Why do you need people from a particular political class to tell Harris's story? This is Harris's story. She's not doing something out of principle. She's doing what she has to do to win. That's her only goal. She'll say and do anything to win. Have you guys not figured that out by now? But minority vendors and media companies believe the Harris campaign is taking operatives of color for granted. Wait. Do you mean to tell me that officials within or agents of the Democratic Party would take minority demographics in this country for granted in the voting bloc? Boy, this is just amazing revelations, isn't it? But where have you guys been? Seriously. They believe Harris campaign is taking operatives of color for granted and failing to spread around the lucrative contracts white-owned firms are getting. Money, please. It's an issue that Democratic campaigns have dealt with for decades, you don't say. And those close to Harris say she inherited the current problems from Joe Biden. Right. Because Kamala Harris has no ability to make decisions for herself or her own campaign. It really is Joe's fault. Take responsibility for yourself, Kamala. And allies say Harris has repeatedly told aides that she wanted to spend more money on minority vendors and get out the vote operations. I wanted to, guys. Seriously, I really wanted to, but dang that Joe. Dang that Joe Biden. After he stopped being the presidential nominee and I became the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party and I got control as a campaign over all the I just, it's just the way it is. I can't do nothing about it. I have no power. I have no control. I have no ability to direct my own campaign. It really is up to the forces of others. Quote, the vision of the vice president is to make sure that with all the money that's being raised, that she can reach voters, unquote, said Minion Moore. Minion Moore? I've heard that name in the past. A close advisor to Harris and the 2024 Democratic Convention chair. That might be why. Quote, and certainly it is important to her that she reaches voters through the lens of people who that can communicate with them. Yes, because as we know, if you are of a particular race, no one can understand or communicate with you if they are of a different race. A message cannot be universal between the electorate. It has to be told from someone who looks like you. All the time. Now, this sounds like the Party of Unity, doesn't it? It is important to her that she reaches voters through the lens of people that can communicate with them. That's why we go to trusted voices. That is her value system. That is who she has been, and I'm sure that it is the directive that the campaign is getting, unquote. You're sure? So there's some room for doubt? Or you have to guess? Okay. Notus, or Notus, or Notus, spoke with more than a dozen vendors, outside advisors, and campaign staffers of all races for this story. Oh, would you like to name them? All races? All of them? Okay. And most say any directive hasn't been actualized. Uh-oh. The result doesn't just imperil the bottom lines for minority-owned consulting companies, which is the major concern, of course, which typically rely on presidential campaigns to stay afloat in the off years. I'm not seeing much of an imperative or a principle of, like, bettering the country in some way. It's like, give me money, please. It's also impacting the campaign's outreach to the communities that the firms reflect, they say. How? So wait, I just again, just so I'm clear on this. A campaign consulting firm that is run by black people cannot create a element of the campaign that can reach white voters? A white-run campaign consulting firm can't create a messaging marketing strategy or whatever that cannot reach Asian voters? What are you talking about? What? Give me an example. Give me an example where firm run by color A absolutely failed to connect with color B because somehow the mystic chords of melanin didn't connect in messaging. Really? Okay. Quote, last time there was a better perspective, said one Democratic operative close to the campaign when asked about how the campaign used money to court black voters. Quote, it's not just the media. It's get out the vote operations and grassroots operations. It's 20 questions now when it comes to anything for black spending. And what we're talking about are a small fraction of what's being spent for the general market. It's getting pretty insulting. Guys, the money you could be spending on us is a pittance compared to where you spend elsewhere. Just spend it with us because we're the right color. Checking with us for past performance and how effective our previous work has been and whether we had any successes and how many votes we actually gained for you in the last cycle. That's all beside the point. Just give us money, please. Some feel that there's too few people inside the campaign advocating for black spending. Let's just review that for a second here. Some feel there's too few people inside the campaign advocating for black spending. Again, your first concern is what? That the only major pressure is coming from the outside. And the most damning charge is that a campaign led by the first black and South Asian woman to win the party's nomination. I think the first black and South Asian woman to be bestowed the party's nomination would be far more accurate, but anyway, to win the party's nomination is marching into the final 40 days of the election with less money invested in black outreach and black firms than Biden had in 2020. And if she wins the election having done this, imagine the embarrassment that she was able to do so without specific help based on skin color. Yikes. But the Harris campaign is running a different race than Biden did last cycle. You don't say. The pandemic forced campaigns to rely more on paid media because of the inability to have a semblance of the traditional ground game that exists now. I guess. This year's budget is allocated to include all expenditures, paid media, get out the vote, and field operations. I guess so. Okay. And? I guess then you'd have to go back to a presidential campaign that had a, let's say, candidate of color prior to the pandemic. Gosh, who could that be? I seem to recall there was somebody that fell into those categories at one point or another. Maybe we should compare this strategy to the Obama strategy. What did Obama do? How did Obama allocate his campaign funds in his get out the vote thing and everything else? I realize that things have changed a little bit since Obama's day, social media and elsewise, but, the fundamentals never really changed. So, in a similar situation with a candidate that falls within similar demographics, as is your major concern, what did the Obama administration do, or the campaign do at the time, and how does that compare to what Kamala Harris is doing? Is it different? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking sincerely. I don't know. I'd love to know because, yes, okay, the Biden campaign was under a very different set of, situations and circumstances. Anyway, Cedric Richmond, co-chair of both the now defunct Biden campaign and current Harris campaign, how's that working out, said this criticism should be spread out all across the Democratic Party and not laid solely at the vice president's feet. Well, I hate to tell you this, Cedric, the vice president, as the Democratic nominee for president, represents the Democratic Party now. There was that whole convention thing where she, quote unquote, won the nomination. So if her campaign is not representative of the Democratic Party writ large, I'm not quite sure what to tell you. In an interview set up by the campaign, sounds objective, he pushed back against any notion that aides are taking black operatives for granted and brushed off concerns. Quote, everybody who said it's not about money, that's a lie. It's all about money, he told Notus, or Notus, or Notus. Well, he's right about that. He's right about that. Anybody who says it's not about money, especially the quotations above, is not telling the truth. Either way, quote, they're making noise because they want money and they want a contract, and that's fair. It's fine, and they should just say that, unquote. I agree. Cedric, at least on this point, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And in fact, if the Kamala Harris campaign is actually assessing their vendors on the basis of merit and not race, then you know what? I got nothing to complain about. But the vendors that are complaining about not getting paid aren't arguing for anything other than pay us because we're black. I don't think I've seen anything above that's talked about merit. The only argument I've seen so far is, well, obviously, if you don't pay a black consulting firm on this, then black voters won't hear your message. Which makes absolutely no sense. But anyway. But one senior Democrat close to the campaign, why are you guys giving these guys anonymity? Just who is it? Anyway, close to the campaign rejected that comment. Quote, black people and black donors, they've been raising millions of dollars. This is not a handout for anything. Well, you haven't been listening to the black vendors quoted above. This is about acknowledging the role of the black vote in a race that is essentially tied, unquote. Wait. Do you mean to tell me that you're expecting the Democratic Party to actually recognize the black vote despite their rhetoric? I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. And the spending, or lack thereof, and thereof is actually one word if I'm not mistaken, fits into a pattern of Democrats taking the constituencies necessary to win for granted, they say. Well, yes. Were you expecting something else? What's the definition of insanity again? Quote, it's a little concerning to see that the spending is so much less, so far lower. I think it's approximately 1/4 less than when it was at this point 4 years ago, unquote. One Democratic consultant close to the Harris-Walz campaign said about black paid media. You know, every time they do this, I just have to sort of take it on faith that someone actually said this, right? Because every single source, every person quoted in this so far, save for Kamala Harris officials, are just anonymous. But okay. Quote, we skated by in 2020, and we're not spending at the levels that we were spending at then, unquote. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Also, by the way, setting aside all of the, racial considerations and everything else, if you want to talk about a candidate who knows how to effectively spend a campaign budget, you're looking at the wrong person. Kamala Harris had something like a $40 million war chest in her original presidential campaign back in 2019. And she burned it into nothingness. She wasn't effective at all. I don't know if you recall the last time Kamala Harris ran for president. She failed. She failed miserably. She couldn't even get her own state to vote for her in the primaries. And setting aside all the considerations of race, you expect this campaign, headed by this individual, to wisely spend its money? Recent history is absent from people's considerations here. But anyway, polls show Democrats have lost significant ground with black voters this cycle, particularly when Biden was atop the ticket. Harris's candidacy and the momentum appears to have helped regain some support. And momentum. Yeah, it's astroturfed artificial momentum, but all the same. An August poll from the Associated Press found that nearly half of the black respondents said that they were either extremely or very excited, quote unquote, about Harris, a jump from March when only 30% said the same for Biden. And on what basis were they excited? Specifically, like what excited them about Harris? I'd love to know. But operatives across the Democratic diaspora fear the campaign isn't spending enough to turn that uptick in enthusiasm into actual votes, as 1 in 4 black men under 50 supports Trump for president, per an NAACP poll this month. And in battleground states, overall black voters are going 82% for Harris from a Howard University poll earlier this month. In 2020, black voters supported Biden by 92% per the Pew Research Center. Oh my gosh. Quote, Harris has a compelling story to tell, said Adrienne Shropshire, executive director of Black PAC, which targets black voters. Yes, her compelling story is, well, I was raised in a middle-class family. That's the compelling story I keep hearing. Her group was named one of 13 independent groups critical to Harris's success in November. Success in November. Critical to Harris's success in November. Pardon me, I read that wrong. All right, let's try that again. Her group was named one of 13 independent groups critical to Harris's success in November, a nod from the campaign to donors to fund the outside groups as part of their strategy to reach black voters, a campaign official said. Yeah, if you don't fund these groups based on the people who run them, you're not going to win the election. Sounds almost like political extortion after a fashion, doesn't it? Quote, and the question that remains is, can they reach enough voters, particularly those voters who remain not just skeptical, but continue to question whether or not their participation in our elections matter, right? Unquote. Well, right. I guess. I mean...
Right?
Yeah. Right, Shane?
Right?
Of course.
Of course! Of course!
Okay. Citing recent ads on black radio... Sure. I mean, let's, just segregate different media. That's fine. Okay. Other investments and Harris's sit down with the National Association of Black Journalists, Shropshire added of the campaign, quote, they very clearly understand, I think, the need to increase the communications they're having with black voters, unquote. How about just communicate with voters? I don't know. Address the concerns of voters. Maybe... Anyway. Many across the party who notice, or not us, or no-tos, spoke with, blamed the situation on folks. Not folks with an X, but F-U-L-K-S, who some described as unresponsive to internal and external requests. This is the person that was on the conference call at the beginning of the article. He's territorial with how paid media is conducted and how decisions are made, others have said. Anonymous others, but sure, why not? And ultimately, he is inexperienced in paid media. Really? People on the Kamala Harris campaign being inexperienced in their positions? I don't know what to say to that. That's just absolutely amazing. Folks has been asked repeatedly by high-ranking officials on the campaign to release more money from the budget to go to black firms who handle black outreach, most say often to no avail. Quote, the first, second, and third response from him is no on everything. Whatever you put forward, it's no. It's not even necessarily considered, just reflexively, it's no, said one vendor. This sounds creepily familiar. So there's a book I've recommended many, many times to people, and I still recommend it today. And in fact, it's probably very, very relevant to listen to or read, depending on your format today, if you can get it. It's called Shattered. It's about the failure of the Hillary Clinton campaign. And there was a section talking about one of Hillary's staff members who was in charge of spending, especially campaign spending. And I forget his name. I think it was Robbie something. Anyway, there was a large section in the book, and it repeated in different places as well, talking about the reluctance to spend campaign money in places where they should have spent campaign money to get the vote out, to get the message out, to take trips to for campaign rallies and so on. It's kind of eerie to hear this about the Kamala Harris campaign because it is a direct echo of some of the things that ultimately helped to fail the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now, I'm not saying that the Kamala Harris campaign is going to fail, but it is interesting. Others also chide campaign manager Jen O'Malley-Dillon, who they say ultimately has final say over the budget and bears the most responsibility for who is or is not getting paid. Many also fault digital media head Rob Flaherty, who operatives say is allowing white-owned firms to place digital ads for the black community, once a taboo for Democratic campaigns. Yes, because obviously, again, a firm whose leadership is composed of mostly one racial demographic can't create anything that might speak to any other racial demographic because melanin. I guess. Leading Democrats like campaign co-chair Marcia Fudge and Congressional Black Caucus chair Stephen Horsford have also privately expressed their concern about who is getting campaign money and which businesses are being empowered. I guess money is power after fashion. So has Richmond, two sources familiar with the conversations told not us, or no twos, or whatever. Asked if he had privately expressed his concerns to the campaign, Richmond did not say no. Wait. What? I tried. Asked if he had privately expressed his concerns to the campaign, Richmond did not say no. So, yes? Okay, quote, I'll answer it this way. I am trying to win a race. If ever there was a double entendre. Given the subject matter of this article, I don't think I've heard a better one. That's great. I am trying to win a race, and I believe we have to touch voters. Okay. Center. All right. I am trying to win a race, and I believe we have to touch voters. We have to touch black voters and brown voters. We have to touch the... I'm sorry. I'm a third grader. I am... Oh, okay. We have to touch black voters and brown voters. We have to touch them with the people with the expertise to connect with them. So I have been very dogged on making sure that that's what we are trying to do. We have to touch them with the people with the expertise to connect. Okay. Just last week, in a meeting with folks, senior members of the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, sorry, for a second I thought we were talking about the Canadian Broadcasting Company. The CBC asked for a sizable investment from the campaign to cover incumbent candidate protection. Wait, is this a protection racket? Okay. Senior members of the Congressional Black Caucus asked for a sizable investment from the campaign to cover incumbent candidate protection and get out the vote efforts, similar to the $25 million that the campaign transferred to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. We want what they're getting. In exchange for incumbent candidate protection. What does that mean? And get out the vote efforts is a bit more specific, but still relatively amorphous. Still, incumbent candidate protection? Okay, I really want to know what that entails. I can use my imagination for get out the vote stuff. Sure, okay. Registering voters, passing out pamphlets, sure, okay. But incumbent candidate protection? I just don't know. People familiar with a later meeting say folks told a group that the requests were egregious. The operative told, not us, or notus, or no twos. It's unclear how much Harris is aware of the frustration. Well, given the organizational tempo of the Harris office in previous months and years now, I'd be surprised if she knew much about it, or if she did, that she cared. But anyway, two people close to Harris, whoever those are, told Notus, not us, no twos, that she told advisors last month that she wanted to spend more money with black vendors and organizations on the ground who are doing outreach and get out the vote operations. Okay, so if she said that, why aren't you? A third person, told Notus, not us, no twos, that Harris raised the issue of paying black vendors and get out the vote operations early on in the campaign when Biden was still on the ticket. But according to people with knowledge, that still hasn't really been prioritized. So Kamala Harris making a statement of intent and not following through. Interesting piece of information. Quote, she is clearly committed to investing in small businesses, but who is responsible for not operationalizing this in her campaign, said a second vendor. Well, yeah, committed to small businesses, but just not the businesses you want invested in because of this race of the owners, I guess. The issue of black vendors not getting equitable pay is not new. Equitable pay? If you're running for contracts for work, it's going to be based on what someone is trying to charge and the quality of their past actions. Equitable pay? Why should you get equitable pay? Just because you're black? That's what it sounded like. What if a white business owner came and said, what if Kamala was, right, running things exactly as all these people are complaining about? Like, oh, you're giving all the money to the black owners. I'm a white owner. I want equitable pay. What do you think the reaction of that would be? The issue of black voters not getting equitable pay is not new. In fact, stories pop up every cycle of the neglected firms. Neglected. Those who spoke to Not Us, Notus, Notus cited President Barack Obama's campaign as an early offender. Well, I hate to bring up this point, but did Barack Obama lose his campaigns? I know it's a crazy question. Did Barack Obama lose his presidential campaigns? If the answer is no, then maybe, at least by example, his strategy was a winning one? I don't know. Quote, "They didn't build a deep enough bench," said one person who has worked on campaigns for 30 plus years. That could be a guy that runs and gets coffee. Guys, come on. Either name your sources when it's not vital for their personal safety or something, or just don't even bother. Good gravy. Hillary Clinton's campaign didn't do much better, though they tried to put more emphasis on making sure some companies were black-owned. The pattern changed substantially in 2020 when the pandemic caused campaigns to rely more on advertising, particularly in black markets, and, let's be honest, also taking advantage of the insanity that occurred after George Floyd. But never mind. But in 2023, that regressed. Even in June of this year, vendors went public with their grievances with the Biden campaign, telling Politico, quote, "The campaign is missing an opportunity to elevate and invest in a part of the political class that is more reflective of the party's base," unquote. It led many who Notus spoke with to label this as a Biden campaign hangover, continued by the holdover aides who Harris kept after the transition. Boy, this is a long article. I didn't think it'd go on this long. Holy cats. Before the switch, the then Biden campaign only retained one black-owned vendor to create and place their media for TV and radio for black audiences, Truxton Creative. While white-owned shops like Bully Pulpit Interactive and Gambit Strategies, okay, if that's not a X-Men front company, I don't know what is, received full contracts this year, Truxton, founded by Terrence Green, hasn't. Okay, why? I mean, if you're going to tell me that it's because the owners of Truxton Creative are black, then both the Biden and consequently the Harris campaign are racist, correct? Is there any other reason why, aside from race, that the campaign has provided? Or have they just not provided at all? I don't know. The Harris campaign has since added on additional black firms like Hit Strategies, a polling firm, as well as Walton Isaacson, a firm associated with American businessman Irvin Magic Johnson, and Rise Up Media and Marketing Solutions, a media buyer, and all in the field, a canvassing operation for Georgia and North Carolina. But unlike in 2020, the campaign doesn't have a black-owned direct mail firm on its payroll. Yes, because sending things through the mail can only be done by people with a particular skin color? I'm still failing to see the connection or necessity of skin color to messaging. Unless you want to give me an example. I'd love some examples. The company they are using, Deliver Strategies, also works on behalf of entities like the NAACP and other black-led organizations and black Democrats, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Raphael Warnock. Okay, so is Deliver Strategies a white-owned business? And if so, why are all these black-led organizations and individuals using them? Okay, still, it's about the same number of black vendors the campaign retained in 2020, a campaign official noted. Well, again, did the Democrat running for president in 2020 win the election? If the answer is yes, maybe it's because their strategy worked? While operatives applaud more inclusion, at the heart of the issue is the volume of spending with black-owned firms. Yeah, no, I've got that. I've got that so far. I really have gotten that message. Lots more money isn't being spent on businesses because owners are particular skin color. I've gotten that. At the heart of the issue is the volume of spending with black-owned firms compared to white-owned ones, something they say isn't even close. Is this article like AI generated or something? It's just repeating the same points in different words over and over again. Quote, "This will have lasting impacts on black media firms during a cycle where we have raised the most money in the history of a campaign," said the second Democratic vendor. Which one is the second Democratic? See, this is why you really should name your sources. Because I don't know who you're talking about. And obviously it doesn't matter. Truxton Creative received just over $3 million from the Biden campaign in 2020, the only spending with them that cycle per disbursement reports from the Federal Election Commission. Another $45.2 million was spent with Converging Media, a black-owned company, for black media buys during the same period. Okay, so let's just call it $49 million. 48. We'll round down. $48 million. Okay, and now this cycle, the Biden campaign, started buying earlier and spending more. Truxton had taken in just under $13.9 million from mid-2023 to mid-July of this year. So $13.9 million in 7 months. Wow. And that's up from $3 million 3 years previous, pardon me. Oh, sorry, no, pardon me, I got that wrong. Mid-2023 to mid-July of this year. Okay, so over a year's time. We'll say in 1 year, $13.9 million a year? That's not bad. If I was making $13.9 million in a year. Okay, after Harris took over in late July, the campaign spent an additional roughly $4.1 million with Truxton. Okay, so over the course of, let's say, July of 2023 through July of 2024, they get $13.9 million. Between July of this year and now, they receive $4 million. But let's do the math here. July, August, so in 3 months, they got $4 million. Whereas in 12 months, they got $13.9 million. I'd say that's an increase, isn't it? For a total about $18 million this cycle. Right. Because it's a commission-based business, companies like Truxton would only net a small portion of that spending. The majority would go to media companies where the ads are being placed, and some to production. Well, they probably knew that ahead of time because that's their business. So that's the business. And it's a heck of a lot more than they were getting back in 2020 with only $3 million being spent, right? Is this the part where I'm supposed to feel sorry for them? Okay, those figures pale in comparison to the volume of what the campaign is spending with some white-owned firms. Okay, again, is the only differential in decision-making at the Kamala Harris campaign the race of the owners? If you can say that with certainty, then by all means, tell me that the Kamala Harris campaign is being racist. You're not saying that, you're just complaining that there is a disparity. And though I am loath to try to give Kamala credit, in the absence of any evidence otherwise, I have to do it here. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. A disparity does not inherently indicate an inequity. You have not shown that the Kamala Harris campaign is being racist when it comes to its vendors. You're just showing that less is being spent in aggregate on non-white owned businesses. That's all you've shown, if anything. Those figures pale in comparison to the volume of what the campaign is spending with some white-owned firm. The Blue Sky Agency, one of those firms, doesn't show up in FEC filings. Why? Okay, but an industry source told Notus, or Notus, or Notus, that they were paid through an intermediary, Media Buying and Analytics LLC. All these campaign media firms, they all sound like fly-by-night operations and really shady to begin with, but whatever. From mid-August of 2019, to mid-July of 2020, media buying took in about $36.5 million. Okay, from the same time span this cycle, media buying got about $76.4 million from the campaign. Since Harris took over, the campaign has spent an additional around $62 million with media buying. So they practically doubled the amount of money spent on this one company since Kamala took over in July, after a year of earning $76 million. Do you recall, and I know this was a long time ago, guys, I'm talking to the people writing this article, do you recall the wisdom of Kamala Harris's spending regime in her first presidential campaign? Does any of this surprise you guys? Anyway, the Biden campaign also spent almost $41.4 million with Bully Pulpit between late August and late December of 2020. This year, the campaign started buying earlier. Between late February and mid-July, they'd already spent over $21.3 million with Bully Pulpit. After Harris took over, the campaign spent another nearly $17.5 million with Bully Pulpit. I'm seeing a pattern forming here. Biden spends over the course of the year X dollar amount of millions of dollars. And then within 3 months' time, or less than that now at this point, Kamala spends almost an equal amount of money as was spent in a previous year. And she's still tied with Trump, effectively. Holy cats. I mean, I guess there is some argument for making up for lost time, but holy cow. And other markets are receiving attention too. Latino-owned firm Connection has netted about... Connection. Wasn't that the name of the... God. There was that mom streamer who got arrested for child abuse and everything, and she was part of this sort of like weird self-help cult. Wasn't that also called Connections with an X? Am I misremembering? Maybe not. Anyway, a Latino-owned firm, Connection, has netted about $21 million from the campaign since last August, okay? More than what's been spent with Truxton so far. Well, maybe Truxton's company just sucks. You haven't talked about performance at all here, have you? I mean, what amount of votes could Truxton logically or reasonably claim to have gained for Biden in the previous cycle? Or get out the vote things at this point are likely voters so far in this cycle? Again, does a disparity inherently indicate an inequity? The answer is no. You need more evidence than that. Good gravy, this goes on. One change this election cycle, operatives say, is the campaign is asking minority businesses to pitch, quote, constituency work, unquote, which inherently limits their ability to make money in comparison to white-owned firms that pitch for the quote-unquote general market, a pseudonym for typically white audiences where voters of color could also be impacted. Right, so getting the most general message out to the widest number, and widest, W-I-D-E-S-T, widest number of potential voters. But some TV ads made by vendors of color do also run in the general market. You don't say. So I guess when those ads run, white people just can't understand them. I suppose. Quote, there's always going to be an oversized difference between two companies like that, which is unfortunate, the consultant close to the campaign said. Do you mean to tell me that because the population in this country, the demographics are split up something like 65% white versus 13% black, there might be a larger voter base to reach proportionally than another? And since Harris joined the ticket? You mean like back in 2020? The campaign has added white-owned firms like AL Media Strategy and Magnus Pearson Media. There are so many campaign and media strategy companies. Notice, Not Us, No2s reached out to Connection, Al Media, Gambit, Bully Pulpit, Walton Isaacson, and Truxton Creative, who did not respond to requests for comment. Really? Notice, Not Us, No2s was not able to find contact information for media buying or Magnus Pearson Media. You weren't able to find contact information? They don't have a website with an email address or a phone number? Well, that sounds not shady at all. Two people close to the campaign have said that Folks has argued that a white-owned firm with a black principal or associate assigned to the account should carry the same weight as a black-owned firm. Well, if we're just talking about skin colors in the mix, you'd think that'd be enough. But no, it's not enough. Because the people in charge are still the wrong skin color, I guess. The campaign has asked other black-owned companies to build decks and pitch their constituency work and present it in meetings, only to be ghosted and eventually hear through the grapevine that it went to another non-minority firm. One vendor who worked for the Biden campaign in 2020 and received nothing but good feedback first engaged the campaign to talk about returning last fall. They weren't told until late this summer that they wouldn't be hired, derailing their ability to take on other clients because of the legal requirements of a presidential campaign. Well, if you put all your eggs into one basket and you believe the pillow talk, who's the fool? Folks, the architect of Warnock's statewide campaigns, took over the full paid operation after the transition to Harris, a responsibility once under longtime Biden aide Mike Donnellan. Folks previously helped manage the campaign's relationship with black media. By the way, just going back a little bit. So you put all your eggs in one basket, and because of the timing, you weren't able to take on other clients because of presidential campaign. What are the legal requirements of presidential campaign? What, and I don't know, I'm asking sincerely, what legal requirements prevent you from taking on other clients? You can't take on state clients, you can't take on, local clients or other federal offices. You couldn't pursue the Trump campaign. I don't understand. He has told campaign officials to walk back money already promised to black vendors, according to an email reviewed by Notus. And once Harris took control of the campaign, he declared that, quote, our strategy has changed, unquote, and fewer resources would be spent in the black community because the candidate herself is black, according to two people familiar. Harris has repeatedly said that there shouldn't be an, quote, assumption, unquote, about her having black support. All right, I mean, they have a point there. If your candidate is of the right skin color, then anything she says to the country by way of trying to encourage voters to vote for her should be understood by people of the same skin color, so why bother getting particular race-based get out the vote? Maybe you need to get agencies that are run by white people because only white people can understand white people, and that's the vote they have to convince or something. You see where this goes if you start thinking the way that they're laying it out? During the transition from Biden to Harris, the campaign was dark on black voter radio and TV ads for 4 weeks concerning people close to the campaign. General market ads went back up around a week after the transition, probably because they were scrambling and had no idea how to do what they were doing. One source told Notus, that the campaign plans to place nearly all of its ad buys this month in the general market. Constituency markets, including Black, Latino, and Asian, would account for just a small part of the ad buys, less than 20%. So, 19%? 5%? Okay. But it's not just black operatives who see warning signs. It's white and Latino aides as well. Recently, Latino staffers pushed back internally on the campaign after it was suggested that less money could be spent on outreach, according to a source familiar with their efforts. One person familiar with the conversation said O'Malley Dillon sided with the staffers. This back and forth preceded the announcement that the campaign aimed to boost Latino support with a $3 million radio ad buy. Oh my gosh, $3 million! Ultimately, for these operatives of all races, I don't hear a lot of all races here, but anyway, ultimately for these operatives of all races who want Harris to be successful, why? If she's not fulfilling your needs, wants, desires, and seems to be ignoring you, why do you want her to be successful? You don't think that's not going to carry over into her administration? But okay, want Harris to be successful? The question comes down to this, said a third consultant. Here we go. Quote, who are you trusting to tell the story of the vice president? Unquote. given how many times her story has changed and emphasized which, this, and the other about it, I don't trust anybody. I could care less about her, could not care less about her story. I care more about her policy and her past performance. Past performance is getting a job without actually having earned it, and then getting a nomination without actually having earned it. As far as policies are concerned, well, she's copying Trump or copying Biden and trying to be all things to all people, which usually makes her nothing to most. But anyway, that was a long article, guys. I did not know it was that long. Also, Significant Otter. Hello. Mr. Tickletrunk. Hello. Stop trying to apply logic to illogical ideas. You'll hurt yourself. Mr. Tickletrunk, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I do a weekly show called TED Excellence. It's a bit late now. Let's see. Shadowclaw, hello. That's the same company, I believe. Which company? Oh, that was back. Connection? Well, I think it might be a similar name. I don't think it's the same. I hope it's not the same company. Jaeger Pony, Nexium was the call. No, Nexium was the Keith Raniere weird thing from a few years. I'm talking about the, I forget her name. She was a mom influencer or whatever on YouTube. She had a family channel. They lived in Utah, I think. I suddenly forget her name. But yeah, she was arrested and sent to jail along with her partner in crime, the self-help guru, because a kid escaped being like duct taped up in the house or something. I forget this. Ruby Frankie. Yes, thank you, Shadowclaw. Ruby Frankie and her friend. Some Milfluencer. No, not that lady. Ugh. She was a bit too lean on the bone for my liking, as well as being crazy and abusive, if that matters at all otherwise. Let's see, anybody else here? Interesting that they're using the term folks when the idea of a folk is a strong in activism. Well, folks is actually the last name of an individual. Earlier on in the article, they were talking about a conference call with a Kamala Harris administration operative or staffer or something named Quentin Folks. Yeah, so that's actually a name. I made that joke earlier that usually it's like folks with an X or something, but no, this is a person. So when they're talking about folks, they're talking about an individual. Let's see. Anything else? Yeah, Terry Alexander, Allison Mack and Nexium and Keith Raniere. And that's a whole other cult. That's a whole other story. Plenty of documentaries on those. Shadowclaw, also 2020. I remember that year well. So much voting fraud. There were some straight lines on some of those charts that still make absolutely no sense. But that's a whole other subject for other people to cover, because I think I'm running out of my voice right now. And on that note, notus, notus. I couldn't help myself. It's just I don't know how to say the name of that outlet. Anyway, I'm going to call it here because, that's all I've got. I got to save some things for like TED Excellence and for the Sunday stream. But before I go, I should have beforehand, because I plan these things in advance, which I don't because they're ambush streams and they're very off the cuff. If you'd like to join the Discord server and not already a member of the Discord server, there's a link to the Discord server in the chat. You just have to click on that. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me you're not a bot. I've actually watched the stream and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is Folks. Fulks. That'll let me know that you actually watched the stream. Appreciate that ahead of time. And beyond that, also, Urcale DeStefano, good afternoon to you too. Let's see, just a note that in about 4-ish hours, maybe a little less now, I'll be, hopefully, unless something changes, on the Midnight's Edge After Dark stream to talk about movies and comic books and box offices and all types of other things, depending on what the soup du jour of the day is in the entertainment industry. So look out for that. That's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on Midnight's Edge After Dark. And as mentioned, I'll be here Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for education and enlightenment. Now, I think I have mine selected, but you never know what they can drop in the next 24 hours or so. So it might be still a surprise to me. So looking forward to that. But otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this ambush stream. I swear I'm not going to make these a daily occurrence. It just happened to be the case that these subjects come up and I get excited to find out about them. Also, remember to like, subscribe, and share, and comment, and all that good stuff. I have a merch store down there. I might as well mention this stuff while I have the opportunity. And appreciate those of you that do share my stuff out on social media. When you do, specifically on X, be sure to tag me when you do, scribe_light. I appreciate it when you share my stuff, and I take every opportunity to thank you directly when I see it, because I appreciate that you do. Everyone, have a good rest of your Tuesday. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.